I'm with Gary Reynolds, Chief Investment Officer at Courtiers, to find out what's been going on since we last caught up. Gary, what's happening in the world generally and in the world of Courtiers?
Well, in the world, there's been quite an interesting shift this year, I think, because whereas 2022 was sort of a bit of a recovery for value shares, and these would be companies that are perhaps not your fast-growing tech companies, but solid companies, solid balance sheets, reasonable prospects, low price to earnings ratios, and they've had an absolute hammering so far in 2023. In fact, if you compare growth with value, then there's various measures, but growth has outperformed value by around about 13% so far in 2023. So that's sort of a big change around. And then in the rest of the world, I think what is becoming quite interesting is that whilst we expect inflation will ease back from its very high levels, I'm not sure that it's going to be as easy as the central banks think at the moment to get it down to their target levels of around 2%, which incidentally are an arbitrary figure brought about by New Zealand deciding to introduce this in the late 80s. I don't think there's a lot of science behind them, but they're the changes really, Leo. And for once, of course, the thing we've had the past 6 months, everybody's still getting used to, is increasing interest rates. A phenomenon that we've not been used to because they've been generally decreasing for 30 years. And now we've got increases. So welcome to my world of the 1970s and 1980s when I was young.
Gary, you said growth's outperforming value. Courtiers is a value investor. So what are you and the investment team doing about that right now?
Well, not a lot really, Leo. We are value investors for good reason, and that's because it tends to win over the long term. And when you're running portfolios for investors that are not trying to shoot the lights out, they're trying to make sure that they can hit their objectives, and they are invariably long-term investors. I've gone on about this before. We've got investors that are still with Courtiers, and Courtiers is now over 40 years old. They're still with Courtiers. They came to Courtiers in the early 80s. So we've got investors that have been with us for the long term, and our investors tend to have very long time horizons. So what you want to do is make sure that they can enjoy their capital for the rest of their lives, and enjoy the fruits of their labours. And our job is to make sure the capital doesn't expire before they do. So we don't chase results. And when you get a little turnaround like this, and even interest rates, long dated gilts went up a little bit this year. We don't have a lot of duration. Growth outperforms value. We're much more value than growth. It's not the best of times. Let me put that in context. The multi-asset funds are all making money so far in 2023, but we're not making as much money as if we'd been piled into NASDAQ stocks. But investors are not expecting us to go chasing quick returns and speculating. We stick to doing things the way we've done them for decades, and that is seeking out decent companies that can withstand a crisis and deliver returns for our investors in the long term. So we won't be changing anything in that regard, Leo, except finding better opportunities now than were around a few months ago. So that's encouraging.
Better opportunities, you say, Gary. What about changing opportunities? We're hearing a lot about AI and chat GPT and all that kind of thing. Is this introducing the opportunities from an investment perspective?
Yes, I think it is. But not necessarily in the way that you may look at it. Simply, it's almost in the same sort of analogy as that the people that made money out of the gold rush in the US were the people selling the picks and shovels. Now, what you have to look at with AI is not necessarily investing directly into AI companies themselves, but look at where AI may be beneficial, and bearing in mind that the world population is getting a little older. We've not got the number of new employees coming through. If you look at the UK, I'm part of the baby boomer generation. We're moving through into retirement now. I'm not retiring, by the way, but my generation is moving through into retirement. And that means that we've got less workers available. And that's why unemployment is so low, both here and in the US. You've got the same sort of demographic phenomena. And that means less people available to do work. Now, if AI cuts in and begins to produce, enable the delivery of services and products with less people, you're going to get a pickup in productivity. There will be people screaming, "Oh dear, robots are replacing people." People have said that for years, whether it's agricultural machinery or machines producing clothes in the Industrial Revolution. But what we see is that the net effect in the long term is that people end up with a better standard of living and they find different jobs. So you get more personal trainers now than you would have had 100 years ago, because we've got the wherewithal to afford to have a personal trainer, and people generate different range of skills. So it is extraordinarily exciting what AI could do, and it may come to the rescue of the global economy and produce a positive increase in productivity, which, goodness me, we need, because the average working people in this country have had no real increase in their standard of living since the global financial crisis. So I'm very excited about it, Leo, and I think there'll be great opportunities out there.
So let me ask Gary. I know within my team and the brand and communication department that AI has got great potential. Our roles and the resources within the department are varied, but I know already that we can be putting this sort of intelligence to use in a way that allows us to focus in more areas, to be more productive. So while we look at opportunities that AI might bring for us to invest in around the world, what about the resource that Courtiers invests in for the benefit of clients? What about the investment team? Are they looking at any potential to use AI?
Well, if you look at AI as machines doing things that human beings would have previously had to do, we do use a lot of AI. Our sophistication, the ability to write programs, to eke out data, information from data, which 30, 40 years ago, you'd have literally had to sift through yourself and put together and do a lot of clunky calculations to get the results. Those type of things can be done instantaneously. So the benefit we have...
Sorry,
Israel, yes,
Israel, which clients will know, the investment strategy risk return analysis tool that Courtiers has used for longer than I know, that's AI.
Yes, and interestingly, Leo, we're using the development of AI and other tools to take the ISRA onto another level. That's probably for another discussion. But what we are able to get is we're able to sift through an awful lot of data on companies, so that we can focus on a few companies that we think are worthwhile, and then we still put an analyst on to look at them. So we call it quantitative analysis with common sense. Now, if you go into other areas around the issue of AI, AI is going to enable factories to work more mechanically. That's been coming for a while, but you're going to get artificial intelligent cars are coming in that way. You can see that already. That could revolutionize the way in which we use vehicles for transport, and there'll be lots and lots of applications that no one at this stage would have thought of, in exactly the same way that when the computer was first invented, nobody believed you'd be carrying an extraordinary powerful computer around on your wrist in the form of an Apple or an Android watch, and the type of things it would enable you to do. So one thing is certain is that there will be it will change behaviours in ways that human beings won't even have imagined. But let me say, all the evidence through history is that these developments change things for the better. Yes, there'll be a worry about Terminator becoming reality and robots taking over and threatening human beings. Yes, there will be that, but there's no reason why AI shouldn't be used for the benefit of everybody, and it can be used to help us deal with climate change and provide a lot of people around the world with terrific improvements in their standard of living. So I think it's an extraordinary, exciting development.
Thanks, Gary. And to wind up until we next meet, so in all your experience in the investment world, hands-on, put into perspective for us, say, the last 3 years, how it looked, how the investment world looked at the time of the global financial crisis. The last 3 years, to me, as somebody relatively new in the investment world, has been volatility, emerging technology, change, rapid evolution. How does right now look to you in your experience?
Normal, Leo. Normal, because crisis and volatility are always with us. Yes, you're right. There have been some big spikes. At one stage, vol was spiking, but only going back to the high spikes of 2008 and pretty briefly. And it was just a different type of crisis that blindsided everybody. And this is the point I make. You never, ever know what's round the corner in investment management. You don't know the next thing that's going to spook the market, or indeed the next thing that's going to drive the market forward. AI, green energy, whatever it's going to be, space travel. You never know what it's going to be, and you don't know what is coming around the corner to knock stocks back. Nobody foresaw that COVID epidemic. But look, here we are, third anniversary. We're through the third anniversary of the start of the first lockdown now, and we're all here. We're getting back on with things. There's a pathway to better productivity. I think that these are normal times. I have lost count of how many crises I've lived through now in this career in investment management, and actually what you begin to realize is they come in different shapes and forms, but they will come, and they will come again, and in the midst of it all, things get better, which I think is one of the great encouragements of life. Mankind develops and moves forward despite his or her abysmal behaviour sometimes, but we move forward. There are less murders in this country now than there were previously. People are living longer. They've got higher standards of living. Education's a lot better. We're not dying of TB and cholera as we were. Yeah, things get better, and I think that's when anybody's getting depressed by what they think's coming round the corner. Look at history and think about what you have as a generation compared to what your grandparents and great-grandparents had. And then you can be pretty certain that your grandchildren, great-grandchildren are going to have a much better life than you did. And that's progress, and I think that's exciting.
Reassuring words, Gary. Thank you. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much. We'll move forward with hope, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. To our viewers, if you have any questions, please do let us know through your advisor or through our website, or give us a call, and we'll make sure we get some answers to you. Thanks very much.